Simon & Schuster Audioworks presents Star Trek, the Kobayashi Maru by Julia Ecklar. This program is read by James Doohan.
For a long moment, James T. Kirk was aware only that he was hurt, and he was cold. Then the pain settled deep into his right knee, and memory came awake like lightning. The shuttlecraft Halley had started out on a routine exploration, only to be plunged into disaster by a single, ill-placed gravitic mine. Kirk remembered how the mine struck the shuttle, wrenching the craft violently about despite Sulu's efforts to evade it. When the chaos ended, Kirk was left helpless with a badly sprained knee. A broken shoulder had Sulu drifting in and out of consciousness. Scott, McCoy, and Chekhov remained unhurt. Kirk wished he could believe that meant they still had hope of rescue. Turning his head, Kirk searched the dark shuttle for the rest of his men. Dr. Leonard McCoy occupied the seat across the main aisle, one row ahead of a bandaged and braced Sulu. The hard yellow light from an emergency lamp painted the doctor's face in bright relief. Kirk's attention stayed fixed on the forward hatch, where he could hear Chekhov struggling to salvage their transmitter. Behind him, enigmatic sounds and smells wafted into the main compartment from Scott's own repair efforts. Things hadn't changed much then, from when Kirk fell asleep. Scott and Chekhov had the repair situation well in hand. McCoy had done everything he could without a starship sickbay. Kirk closed his eyes and sighed. There was nothing left now but to wait. Sulu's weak voice interrupted Kirk's reverie. "Do you know what this sort of reminds me of, Captain? My class ran this simulation in command school, where a civilian ship was disabled by a gravitic mine." Kirk grinned. Cadets taking the test Sulu spoke of swore secrecy to ensure the honesty of later classes. Under the circumstances, however, Kirk couldn't see the harm in discussing it. "Not just your class, Mr. Sulu. All of them. The Kobayashi Maru." "What's a Kobayashi Maru?" McCoy asked. "That's the name of the ship in a command scenario. A command cadet is placed in charge of a simulated starship, then forced to make a decision about rescuing the Kobayashi Maru while she's disabled in Klingon space." "Well, what's the big deal?" "It was a no-win situation. No matter what you did or how hard you tried, you always lost. All possible decisions failed. It was a character test intended to find out how well you responded to losing." "Well, you must have flunked that one royally." "On the contrary, I scored rather high." "Oh, well, I can't wait to hear this." Kirk was startled to discover that even after all this time, the very thought of talking about his testing embarrassed him. "It's a long story, Bones." McCoy's smile only widened. "Well, we have lots of time. Besides, it'll pass the hours." That it would. The hours they had before rescue or death. "I'm not supposed to tell anyone." "Our lips are sealed," Sulu promised, smiling. Chekhov stuck his head into the passenger compartment. "I wouldn't even tell my own mother, sir." "Well, I'll hold you both to that, because if anyone ever tries this stunt again, Starfleet will know where they got the idea." It was like a nightmare. Smoke obscured Ensign Kirk's vision for the second time in as many weeks. Fans roared into life overhead as the simulator cracked open. The students, scattered throughout the bridge simulator, looked around in embarrassed confusion, and, 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 again. He stared fixedly at the navigation helm console as Admiral Howell stepped onto the bridge.
This Kobayashi Maru simulation is now over. You will have 30 minutes to clean up and organize your thoughts. We'll meet in Care Conference Hall at 10 o'clock to review your performance. Dismissed.
Still shaken, the cadets abandoned Kirk and the simulator without a backward glance. Not that Kirk blamed them. A second class of cadets, a second starship, a second Kobayashi Maru test, a second failure. It terrified Kirk to think this might be the beginning of a trend.
Are you going to join the rest of us, Ensign Kirk? Or wait here until the maintenance crews sweep you away?
Kirk flashed a look at Howell's smiling eyes, then forced himself to look away when he realized he was blushing.
I lost my ship.
The words crept out of Kirk before he could stop them.
I lost my crew. Twice. You did everything you could. I should have done more. Maybe. But it wouldn't have made any difference.
Kirk started a protest. He'd studied the great commanders since he was a boy. He knew that Cord, Garth of Izar, or Shutani would have wrenched victory from the jaws of even this defeat. God, it was Shutani he'd tried to emulate in his first scenario, and even then, he'd failed. And that was impossible.
You planned this. Both times you knew I was going to lose. I know everyone is going to lose. The Kobayashi Maru is a no-win scenario. No matter what you do, the computer adjusts for it, compensates. There will always be more Klingons, more damage, less time.
The words brought a bitter taste to Kirk's mouth.
It cheats. Of course it cheats. The point of the scenario is not to let you win. When you said I could take this as many times as I wanted, was that a lie too?
The Admiral shook his head.
No, you can take it till hell freezes over, or until the end of the semester, whichever comes first. But it won't make any difference.
When he stepped off the dais, Kirk tried to do it with a determination worthy of gods. He wasn't sure if he succeeded. He felt abysmally small.
We'll see about that,
was all he said. The World Library Annex in Old El Cerrito had nothing on the Kobayashi Maru. Of course, the Kobayashi Maru didn't exist outside the confines of this damned simulator. No one spoke of it. None of the textbooks mentioned it. None of Kirk's exhaustive searches of the Federation computer banks found even the vaguest reference to anything by that name. Not even a real spaceship. If it weren't for his own dreams, Kirk could almost imagine he'd never really taken the test at all. Still, the fine line between failure and winning had gnawed at his soul in the weeks since his last testing. He'd acquired all the information he could find on other military defeats. If he couldn't learn success from the masters, he would learn failure from them instead. He sketched and figured and planned until he could overturn all those historic battles as if they were preschool disputes. Some of them he could overturn in less time than it took to originally enact them. Some he could avoid altogether. Some he could end before they even started. And on the heels of such successes, his thoughts always turned to the Kobayashi Maru. In so many ways, the test was more complex than anything he could find in his historic references. The computer knew everything, no matter how obscure or unlikely. Klingon reinforcements could arrive out of nowhere, no matter that the neutral zone never hosted more than 4 unreported Klingon cruisers. 12 times now, Kirk had constructed winnable strategies to the Kobayashi Maru. 12 times, he'd countered his own schemes by increasing the Klingon forces. It was like trying to win a war against God. No matter what Kirk conceived of, more Klingons could always converge, or simply not take damage, or fatally damage his own ship with weapons that shouldn't have penetrated the screens. Kirk was bound by the laws of physics. Nothing bound the computer. Without the logic imposed by reality, literally anything could happen. So Admiral Howell was right. Kirk would lose every time. I don't believe in the no-win scenario. I don't believe it's fair to ask students to accept a concept I don't think is valid. Because, after all, it wasn't like the test paralleled real life. The computer didn't outthink Kirk. It cheated. Which meant, he realized suddenly, that he didn't have to play by the rules either. At 10 o'clock the next morning, Kirk was released from class to report to the simulator. A collection of students milled about the bridge set when Kirk arrived. He reported to the monitoring officers, then took his seat at the command chair, feeling as if he had walked through cold jelly. Everyone must see that he was hindered by his vague sense of guilt, that he was actually afraid of going through with this, even after investing so much time and scheming. The arms of the command chair were unyielding beneath his grip. Kirk had the test nearly memorized by now. He watched the cadets around him frown seriously over their instruments until the helmsman turned to request coordinates for avoiding the Klingon neutral zone. Kirk could have cued the senior officer serving at communications. Captain, I'm receiving something over the distress channel. Put it on speakers. The frightened voice whispered through a symphony of static, tugging at Kirk's heart even though he knew this was only a simulation.
This is the Kobayashi Maru, 19 periods out of Altair 6. We have struck a gravitic mine.
Kirk interrupted.
Kobayashi Maru, this is the USS Potemkin. Can you give us your position?
Hydra, Section 10.
The navigator gasped.
The neutral zone.
The hull has been penetrated. Life support systems failing. Can you assist Potemkin?
So far, nothing about this test deviated from the others Kirk had taken, not by a second or a syllable. Had he done it, Kirk wondered? Would his plan work? He was hardly a computer expert.
Potemkin, we're losing our signal. Can you assist?
One way or the other, he had to try.
Take us in.
The executive officer spoke up.
Captain, that would be in direct violation of treaty. I'm well aware of that. Thank you. Helm, raise shields, just in case.
The computer warned them when they entered the Klingon neutral zone, suggesting they reconsider their actions. Kirk had no intentions of turning back now, even when the communications officer gave a startled little cry.
I've lost the signal!
And right behind, the helmsman shouted,
3 Klingon cruisers closing on our stern! Evasive action!
Kirk gripped the arms of his chair in anticipation of the blow he knew was coming. It jolted the simulator, exploding the helm console into flame before any of his bridge crew could acknowledge.
Full power to screens. Screens are dead, Captain. Contact the Klingon vessels. Tell them we're on a rescue mission.
He stared accusingly at the view screen, knowing Howell and the others were watching and wanting to burn them with his anger. Black space and 3 gunmetal blue war dragons stared back at him in sinister silence. He didn't even realize the communications officer had never responded until the executive officer spoke.
The captain told you to raise the Klingon commander, Ensign.
The communications officer stammered helplessly for a moment. Kirk swung the command chair about in time to see the communications officer close his eyes and timidly touch a button.
Coming on speakers now, sir.
You have entered Federation neutral zone against treaty. In the name of Klingon Empire, Khem declares war.
Jerking about in his chair to face the view screen, Kirk endeavored to assume what he hoped was an expression of cultured confidence.
This is Captain James T. Kirk of the USS Potemkin. We are on a rescue mission in search of a civilian freighter registered with the United Federation of Planets. We mean no harm, but we will defend ourselves if necessary.
Captain Kirk. The Captain Kirk.
Kirk fought a smile as his astonished bridge crew looked back at him.
I'll prove it, if you force me.
That will not be necessary. Report coordinates of freighter, and Khem will offer all assistance. Captain Kirk.
Somehow, the dead helmsman's laughter destroyed the solemnity of the moment. By the time the test was over, 18 minutes, 27 seconds had elapsed. The simulator stank of seared wiring and melted plastic when the view screen cracked to admit Admiral Howell. Kirk remained in his command chair, his head angled downward as he stroked the chair like a prized horse.
We did it. We beat the no-win scenario. That was an interesting performance, but what did you prove? The cheating pays off?
Relegating his solution to the realm of simple cheating stung Kirk's pride.
Consider me a conscientious objector. I don't think of it as cheating when the rules of the game are unfair. And you think reprogramming the simulation so the Klingons believe you're a famous starship captain makes it fair? What are you going to do when you run up against Klingons in real life? Convince them all you're Garth of Izar?
Kirk straightened in the command chair, feeling suddenly protective of some nebulous future ship and career.
I'll deal with that as I come to it, sir. I may not have to convince them of anything at all. Forget I even asked. Shall we go see what the rest of the class has to say this time? I have a feeling you've got quite a busy time ahead of you. Yes, sir. I guess I deserve whatever they give me. Yes, Ensign Kirk. I think you probably do.
It's so in character, Jim. I'm surprised I didn't just guess it.
I don't think I understand.
Chekhov had joined them from the front hatch partway through Kirk's narration. He sat now with his back to the airlock doors, arms folded on his drawn-up knees.
Are you saying you cheated?
McCoy's face was too studiously serious to be sincere when he turned toward the younger man.
Lieutenant Chekhov, the word cheated doesn't do credit to what our captain accomplished. He exercised a commander's prerogative of creativity.
I changed the conditions of the test.
You cheated?
Without warning, Sulu dissolved into quiet, pain-broken laughter.
Does that really surprise you, Pavel? Compared to what you did?
Your injury doesn't grant you that much immunity.
Chekhov's threatening tone seemed to amuse Sulu all the more. McCoy's eyebrows rose in innocent interest.
Come on, Mr. Chekhov. Turnabout's fair play.
It's embarrassing.
It's always embarrassing. I'm sure that's all part of the test.
Kirk allowed with a shrug. Sulu continued.
Actually, the Kobayashi Maru isn't what's embarrassing. That's just set up for the good part. But it's a great story, really.
Chekhov heaved a rough sigh of frustration and turned to glare out the front viewport. Feeling the need to alleviate some of the stress, Kirk echoed McCoy's earlier quip.
It'll pass the hours.
He saw understanding dawn in the dark Russian eyes, and Chekhov nodded faintly.
It really isn't funny.
The lieutenant pursed his lips and turned back toward the viewport again.
It's more embarrassing than anything else.
When the USS Yorktown exploded, Ensign Pavel Chekhov settled back into his auditorium seat with a contented sigh. The 3 Klingon vessels surrounding the starship followed almost immediately, washing the view screen at the front of the lecture hall an impressive, roaring white. When the auditorium lights came up, cadets blinked about them, and Robert Cecil leaned over from the chair next to Chekhov.
Kramer's going to kill you.
Chekhov rested his chin in his hands, watching Cecil brush carbon grime out of his hair.
What can he do? They put me in a simulator and told me to blow up the Klingons. So, I blew them up.
Well, I don't think they intended you to blow up your own ship in the process.
Well, then they should have stressed that before the Klingons arrived.
Chekhov knew sacrificing the Yorktown was probably a unique response to this scenario, but he still believed it was a good solution. After all, they'd been told before entering the simulator that these scenarios were primarily designed to test command character, not rules laid out by command school bureaucrats. Commodore Aldous Kramer stood now at the foot of the floor-to-ceiling view screen. When talk in the lecture hall finally died down, Kramer stepped neatly to the front lectern.
Ensign Chekhov, you have just reviewed your Kobayashi Maru test. How would you rate your performance?
Chekhov stood at the Commodore's summons.
I feel my performance was quite satisfactory, sir.
Kramer nodded, pacing the podium with slow, measured strides.
You violated the Klingon neutral zone, Ensign Chekhov. You engaged 3 Klingon patrol vessels in combat. You willfully destroyed a Federation starship worth several billion credits and killed that starship's crew. Tell me, what about your performance do you consider so satisfactory?
Chekhov tried to ignore the smattering of laughter that passed around the hall.
We did inform the Klingons that we were in the area on a non-hostile rescue mission. They offered no such explanation for their own breach of the neutral zone. I did not kill the Yorktown's crew, sir. You are going to argue that your crew survived because you evacuated the ship before destroying it?
This sudden perception caught Chekhov unprepared.
Well, yes, sir.
Kramer took up his notes as if that ended the matter.
But I still believe destruction of the Yorktown was preferable to capture. The Klingons had already fired upon us, and our warp drive and our weapons systems were inoperative. Rather than allow the Klingons to capture one of our top-of-the-line designs, I opted for destruction of the vessel. And my crew would have been captured and tortured had the Klingons survived, sir. I believe my crew would rather have died.
No one was laughing now. Wanting very much to sit down and direct attention away from himself again, Chekhov slid back into a seat without waiting for Kramer's dismissal. A gusty San Francisco wind skated across the airfield while Chekhov's class assembled there next morning. Waiting in the early dawn was a scarred shuttlecraft. Kramer stood at the foot of its hatch, nodding his satisfaction at the cadets assembled before him.
As many of you know, the Arlan industrial station will be abandoned until the end of the year for bulkhead repairs. During that time, the station is leased to Starfleet for the use of our officers' training school.
The Commodore smiled thinly.
That's you.
In this scenario, you are stranded on a station with an assassin committed to killing you. Your goal is simple. Stay alive. Cecil was the only cadet brave enough to ask.
Sir, who is the assassin?
One of you. It would defeat the purpose of the test to tell you who. You will be outfitted with phasers, unalterably set for stun, and transmitters to inform a neutral monitor when you have been killed. Kramer paused to smile at Chekhov in paternal condescension. And, Ensign Chekhov, much as it may distress you, destruction of the station is not an acceptable solution to this scenario. Please, endeavor to contain yourself. When no one asked anything further, Kramer ordered them to board and then disappeared through the shuttle's hatch himself. Once they reached the Arlan station, Kramer kept Chekhov on the shuttle until last. Cecil and the rest of Chekhov's team had agreed to wait for Chekhov at the station's hub. Chekhov had wanted to perform this scenario solo, but they'd talked him out of it. Since Chekhov was able to pilfer a circuitry map of the Arlan station on his way to join them, he doubted his friends would begrudge him the time. With the help of the Arlan map and his own ingenuity, Chekhov not only secured the administrative offices for his own use, but also gained access to the station's computer. Now, the computer would only receive commands spoken in Russian, a language which Chekhov was confident no one else in his class knew. His friends had indeed waited for him at the station hub. Cecil and the others proved a bit irritable. But once Chekhov led them back to the well-secured administration offices and taught them how to deactivate the booby traps he'd left on the doors, their moods improved. All except Cecil. A thundercloud frown on his face, he slipped into the back office when the others left in search of food. Chekhov, however, stayed behind, concerned by his friend's dark mood. In the rear office, Cecil toyed with a paperweight from the room's only desk. He didn't look up when Chekhov entered the room.
Oh, you turned into a regular Bab and the Butcher, haven't you? The booby trap on those doors, the fact that you took so long finding us, I'll bet you trapped most of the lifts and sleeping quarters, too.
In truth, the bathrooms and commissaries were also well secured. But Chekhov didn't think it wise to mention that just now.
Well, we don't know who the assassin is, Robert. If this were real life, you wouldn't be complaining.
But when does it stop? When do we quit fighting fire with fire and decide not to kill all our competition?
It's a scenario. It isn't real. They're testing our reactions and resourcefulness, not our morality. Everyone's going to behave differently than they would in real life.
I just wish I knew what we were being tested for. It's like the Kobayashi Maru. They don't run that just to find out how long it takes Klingons to kick our butts. They run it to find out who gives up, who goes down fighting, who never notices the battle's over. They want to know everything about us.
But they want us to be strong. Whatever we do, whatever their reasons, they want us to prove we can deal with anything Starfleet requires. That means we do our best to win, even when our best makes us seem cruel or hard.
The fact that you're so sure you know what winning means, Pavel, that's what has me worried most.
Chekhov awoke the next morning to the sounds of phaser fire. He'd slept on the couch in the back office, leaving the front to Cecil and the others. Now, the sounds of attack and his friends' quickly quieting voices told Chekhov that there was nothing he could do to help them. He swore softly and locked the inner door. After a cleanup crew cleared the bodies away, Chekhov stole outside and collected the cast-off phasers, taking them and the remainder of his pilfered triggering devices into the back office with him. He sat on the floor and wired the phasers in series on his belt. Perhaps he wouldn't really sacrifice a Federation starship just to spite the Klingon Empire, but he did believe it was his duty to make his own death too expensive to be worth an enemy's effort. Chekhov tucked the last phaser into the array. With the whole apparatus cinched about his waist, it looked like an equipment belt crowded with a half a dozen extra phasers. Only Chekhov knew about the wire threaded down the sleeve of his singlet. One tug would fire all the phasers in a single burst, stunning everyone in a 10-foot radius. As he'd told Cecil, Chekhov didn't intend to lose, even if all he could do was assure no one else won either. The last survivors hid in the dark, cavernous library. The doors breathed a quiet sigh as Chekhov sneaked inside, phaser in hand. Floor-to-ceiling displays paneled off alcoves where terminals sprouted from the tops of tables. A maze of shelves zigged and zagged across the first few meters. Chekhov crouched lower than the tallest unit and eased forward.
Where the hell have you been?
The sharp prod of a phaser in his back stopped him, not Cantini's voice. Chekhov, surprised at finding one of his old team still alive, left him uncertain how to answer.
I've been confined to the station just like you.
Yeah? Confined to that back office while we got attacked.
I didn't think there was anything I could do to help.
There isn't now. Robert and I are the only ones left, and Robert took over the computer system from you. I guess he's a better tech after all.
Took over from me?
Cecil's disappointed voice startled Chekhov more than Cantini's revelation.
It was programmed to respond in Russian, Pavel. No one else in our class would have done that.
Cecil stood near one of the dead computer terminals, occasionally punching at the keyboard as though expecting some response.
Remember the beginning of the scenario? They told us anything goes. But we also agreed to work as a team. Why didn't you tell us about the computer and the traps? This is a command scenario, Robert. It has nothing to do with friendship. This is my career. If only one of us can be alive at the end, I have to make sure I'm that one.
Well, the way I see it, our buddy the Berserker sees it as his duty to kill us or die. I'm willing to take a chance on a split grade. Let's kill him and get it over with.
Cecil spun the terminal and gusted a heavy sigh, turning his back on the others as though washing his hands of the situation.
You do it then, Robert.
Chekhov took hold of the wire up his sleeve just as Cecil stopped to face him.
I really do understand your decision. It's nothing personal. No, it's nothing personal.
Before Cecil turned away, Chekhov tugged once on the hidden trigger. He didn't even have a chance to notice Cantini's reaction before the blasts of 6 widely dispersed phasers killed them all. Surrounded by his silent classmates during the shuttle ride home, Chekhov felt as though he were drowning in liquid nitrogen. Kramer came to stand at the front of the aisle, peering intently at them all.
I take it none of you are terribly pleased with the outcome of this maneuver. Then, allow me to start with my evaluation of your performances. You all failed. Ensign Cantini, explain the objective of the Arlan scenario.
Well, it's to kill the assassin before he killed you.
Kramer looked from one bewildered face to the next.
I observed enough ambushing and booby-trapping this weekend to know that you all believe that.
Kramer crossed his arms and leaned back against the bulkhead.
Many years ago, this same exercise was performed with another class of cadets.
They were told the same things, that they were being hunted, that they must survive. Unlike you, however, they had among them an officer who commanded instead of merely surviving. That officer inferred that it made no difference if 1 or 100 survived. What mattered was avoiding the assassin. He secured one of the dining halls and drafted a security force to guard the entrances. Anyone wishing to enter had to surrender their weapons. In that manner, the scenario concluded without a single casualty. That class received a high passing grade.
Kramer looked down the aisle at Chekhov again.
Would you care to hypothesize as to that cadet's identity, Ensign Chekhov?
Chekhov nodded, strangling with shame.
James Kirk.
Yes. Command is not a game one wins or loses. Command is an ongoing struggle in which you strive to maintain, not win. I think Ensign Chekhov can tell you that winning and not losing are not necessarily the same thing.
Kramer retreated into the front compartment, and no one said anything further. When the ship landed several hours later, the coral-pink streamers of sunrise were just caressing the horizon. Chekhov stayed in his seat, staring out at the pitted, blasted landing field as the others filed past him.
So, you want to get breakfast?
Chekhov closed his eyes, not even wanting to face Cecil just yet.
I'm not hungry.
Come on, Pavel. Nobody's gonna boot you out of Starfleet. We all screwed up. I get the impression that's the point of these scenarios. We get to screw up here so we don't do it on the starships.
Robert, I'm sorry about what I did. I didn't know what I was thinking. I feel like a fool. If they ever give me a command, I want you to be my executive officer, to keep me from being stupid.
Cecil turned and offered Chekhov a hand up, flushing with pleasure.
We can discuss my future vacation pay over breakfast. I'll need a lot of money. We're going to be heroes.
Chekhov followed Cecil outside, finding it hard to share in his friend's enthusiasm. The expression of trust on Cecil's face was so deep, Chekhov didn't know how to tell him he feared all that trust was misplaced.
Heroes? Us? I don't think so.
Trust me, I know so.
Well, I can't believe Starfleet ever let you two out in the field.
It isn't that bad, Bones. You do a lot of things in command scenarios that don't exactly correspond to your attitudes in real life.
McCoy nodded, obviously unconvinced.
Like lying to the Klingons when you're in a tight spot.
Kirk felt his own cheeks start to burn.
That's different.
The doctor glanced over at Chekhov long enough to comment.
Sure it is. Listen, Chekhov, if you feel the need to take direct action in the next hour or so, go into the back or something, okay?
Chekhov continued staring out the window, refusing to produce a reaction. Leaning back with a weary sigh, Kirk hoped the doctor would take the hint and leave Chekhov's academy embarrassments in the past. As if reading the captain's mind, McCoy turned his attention toward Sulu instead.
So, what about you, Sulu? You took this Kobayashi Maru thing?
Yeah, like a shot in the arm.
Well, I'd say it's your turn to fess up then.
Well, it's not really all that interesting, Doc, and not too appropriate.
When Chekhov grumbled inarticulately from the floor, Sulu insisted.
No, I'm serious.
Well, the captain cheated. Chekhov blew up everyone he knew. How bad can yours have been?
Sulu didn't smile.
Worse, believe me.
Kirk sensed a tension in the helmsman's usually light tone.
Don't push it, Bones. We're all tired.
If he doesn't tell us now, we may never get it out of him. Considering how he insisted with poor Chekhov, it only seems fair.
He
is light.
Sulu sighed and closed his eyes. McCoy went on.
Considering everything else I've heard, I find the thought of Sulu devising a boring solution a little hard to believe.
It isn't boring, it's just isn't funny, that's all. And it takes extra explaining to really understand what I did. A lot of things went into what happened.
Well, we certainly have plenty of time.
Sulu and his great-grandfather returned home still damp from their day at the beach. Pausing in the foyer, Sulu kicked off his shoes while watching the older man for signs of fatigue.
How are you doing, Poppy?
Tetsuo Inomata bent as far as 103-year-old muscles would allow, settling himself into a chair when it became apparent he couldn't reach his feet while standing.
I don't need help, son. You go and get us dinner.
Sketching a short nod, Sulu paused a moment longer before padding into the kitchen. He worried a lot about Poppy. While the neurosurgeons called it a grade 4 glioblastoma, Sulu mostly knew his great-grandfather's ailment as something which was slowly killing the old man. After tomorrow, he'd be off to command school, unable to see his great-grandfather for who knew how long. Because of that, every day with Poppy mattered very much right now. The phone chirped while Sulu was buried shoulder-deep in the refrigerator. Jerking his head up in surprise, whatever greetings he normally uttered leapt from his mind when he met Arthur Cobreen's stern gaze over the viewer.
Where the hell have you two been?
Cobreen's harsh question caught Sulu completely unprepared.
Sailing? Why?
Your great-grandfather skipped his therapy today.
Sulu crossed the kitchen to crouch in front of Tetsuo's chair while the old man ripped a paper napkin into tiny squares.
Why didn't you go, Poppy? Did you forget?
Finishing the folds on a tiny origami crane, Tetsuo ran a hand through Sulu's close-cropped black hair.
I didn't forget. Therapy makes me sick, and I wanted to go sailing with you today. You're going to be gone tomorrow, and I might not get to see you.
He swallowed whatever he intended to say and started folding another square of paper.
You'll be away a long time. I wanted to say goodbye.
This is Starfleet, Poppy, not jail.
I know, son.
I'm sending a volunteer to get you, Mr. Inomata. Go upstairs and get dressed. Someone will be there in about 15 minutes. Halfway up the steps to the bedroom, Tetsuo giggled.
I'll bet Cobreen was a brat when he was little, too. They'll assign me soon, Poppy. It'll be one of the big starships, you'll see.
Tetsuo held onto Sulu longer than the young ensign expected.
Of course you'll be on a starship. I folded you 1,000 paper cranes for your birthday.
Poppy's favorite Japanese legend, that the folding of 1,000 origami cranes granted a man a miracle. Sulu believed more so that the man who could fold 1,000 cranes could accomplish anything.
I love you, and I'll always be with you. Always.
When he finally broke the hug, Sulu saw that they had crushed Poppy's half-folded crane. A week later, Sulu returned to the bunkard between classes, sailing his course notes at his bunk from 3 meters distance, then stumbling to a stop when he caught sight of Poppy perched on someone else's bed.
Poppy, how did you get here? This is a restricted campus.
The old man climbed to his feet, patting Sulu's cheek with one gnarled hand.
Old Japanese men look distinguished. I told them I was an admiral.
Oh, my God. Come on.
Sulu hurried Tetsuo outside, hoping no one would question a young ensign strolling the quad with a venerable admiral. The air gusted around them with the smell of ocean and late roses. It ruffled Sulu's hair like a warm hand.
So, how is everything?
All right. It's only been a week. I've been too busy to form an opinion. You could have called if that's all you wanted to know.
Tetsuo didn't respond. Sulu glanced over at him when the older man reached inside his jacket for a tiny square of colored paper. Tetsuo folded a delicate crane as they walked.
Poppy, is something wrong?
Tetsuo's eyes remained fixed on his tiny work.
I'm dying, son.
I know, Poppy.
The crane finished. Tetsuo tucked it gently into the other pocket, retrieved another slip of paper.
No, I mean now. Dr. Cobrin says the tumor's bigger. He wants to operate. I came here because I wanted to talk to you. I wanted to explain.
Coldness swelled against Sulu's heart, squeezing it like a fist.
Explain what?
The operation isn't going to help. It'll make the tumor smaller, but it might kill me. And it won't make the treatments unnecessary. All it does is make this all go on a little longer.
Dr. Cobrin is the best in the world. If he says you should do it, then you should. It's better than nothing.
Tetsuo squeezed his great-grandson's hands and smiled.
I'm not so sure about that anymore.
Why are you telling me this, Poppy? What are you trying to say?
I'm trying to say that 103 is older than God ever meant people to be. Giving you a grade 4 glioma is his way of telling you to hurry up. I wanted you to understand why I told Dr. Cobrin to stop the treatments, because I know no one else ever will.
Sulu's stomach twisted in silent despair.
You can't stop the treatments.
I already have.
Sulu pulled away out of the old man's reach, out of his grasp.
You're giving up. You're going to desert me just because you're afraid to...
No. I'm not afraid of dying. Not like this. I'm afraid of dying badly, son. I'm afraid that if I wait, if I stay, I'm afraid I'll learn to hate my life. And then I'd really have nothing to live for.
Sulu stared at his great-grandfather, ashamed of the cold tears on his cheeks, ashamed that shedding those tears should make him so afraid.
Dr. Cobrin will stop you.
He won't. I've been folding cranes.
He displayed the half-done crane, shiny purple in the afternoon light. Sulu slapped the paper construct out of his hand.
I don't care about your cranes. I care about you. You said you'd come when I graduated.
I'm sorry, but it has to be this way.
Sulu jerked away when Tetsuo reached up to touch him. Lonely disappointment flashed through the old man's eyes.
I thought you, of all people, would understand.
Well, I don't. I never will. How could you want to die? How could you want to leave me?
He felt more tears rush to the surface. He broke then and ran for the bunker. And it was the image of Tetsuo, abandoned and small in the middle of the windy quad, that Sulu would remember for the rest of his days. His great-grandfather called twice in the next 2 months. Sulu responded to neither message, but cried himself to sleep after both. He returned after a field maneuver, not surprised to find another message awaiting his return. Leaving his gear in a jumble on his bed, he hurried to the public reader terminals, the tape clutched tightly in one hand. Arthur Cobreen's face appeared on the screen, backed by a strange, sterile room.
Cadet Sulu, your great-grandfather died today. He said to tell you he loved you, that he always had, and always would. He left a bunch of those paper cranes you and he used to make all the time. 1,000 of them, he said. He told me you'd understand.
Dr. Cobreen, emergency.
I have to go. I'm sorry I had to tell you like this. Call me at the hospital if you like. I'm so sorry.
Dr. Cobreen, please come to emergency.
The transmission ended on a white corridor wall, and Dr. Cobreen left to care for some patients still among those living. When the class met at the simulator the next morning for yet another scenario, Sulu found it impossible to ignore his own sadness. Yet he had been selected as the captain of this artificial ship, a job he would have given anything to avoid. 4 officers greeted them at the simulator. When all the positions had been assigned, the simulator swung closed, and lights, smells, and sounds cocooned Sulu from all sides. He heard status reports from faraway sections of the non-existent ship, unimportant flippancies over intercom channels, sensors cooing beneath the more strident computer prompts. His heart awakened, ever so slightly.
Helmsman, what is our current heading?
2738472. That will take us within 15.7 parsecs of the Klingon neutral zone, sir. Sulu was certain that detail would matter.
Navigator Janda, plot a course around the neutral zone for rendezvous with station F9. Helmsman, ahead, warp 3.
He had barely finished the command before the communications officer started in his seat.
I'm receiving a transmission. It's very garbled, sir, and it's on the distress channel.
Put it on audio.
This is the fuel carrier Kobayashi Maru, 19 parsecs out of Altair. We have struck a gravitic mine. There's major damage to the hull, and we have lost all power, and we have many casualties, and we...
Kobayashi Maru, this is USS Exeter. What is your position?
Section 10, 32, 49. And we can't reach you. Exeter.
Sulu glanced at the navigator, who winced.
In the neutral zone, sir.
Get in, Exeter. We're losing air and we have no power. Can you help us?
Sir, do you wish a reply?
Sulu waved to delay, considering.
Helm, give me a long-range scan on that sector. What do you get?
The helmsman gnawed at his lower lip, then finally shook his head.
Dust. Gas. I'm getting a lot of interference.
Is there a ship out there?
I don't know, sir.
Sulu nodded slowly, stiffly.
Kobayashi Maru, what are you doing in the neutral zone?
I don't know. We must have slipped course. Exeter, can you help us?
Sulu swallowed, feeling sick with regret.
Kobayashi Maru, I'm sorry. I'm afraid you're on your own. Breaching the Klingon neutral zone is an act of war. Interplanetary conflict with the Klingons would result in millions of lost lives, and that's a risk I am not prepared to take for the lives of so few. I'm very sorry.
What have you done? We're dying.
The communications officer hesitated when Sulu turned to face him.
Captain, that's really lousy. I think we ought to go in.
He's right. You can't just leave them out there. We're leaving them. You've got your course, mister.
Sulu couldn't believe his voice sounded so calm. The navigator turned away from her panel.
You can't do this.
I'm the commander. I have total control over this vessel, and I have made my decision.
But his insides quivered, and he didn't dare let go of the command chair, lest they see how badly he was shaking. This was a hard decision, a horrible decision, a decision that meant all those people would die.
We're supposed to be in Starfleet. We're supposed to guard and protect.
Avoiding a war is cowardice. Kobayashi Maru is less than 50 parsecs into the neutral zone.
But what's she doing in the neutral zone? Why can't we clearly scan her coordinates?
The ionization factor.
Possibly. Or a Klingon trap. There may be no Kobayashi Maru. The navigator threw up her hands in disgust.
That's so damn paranoid.
The executive officer's voice cut in sharply.
Helmsman? Navigator? This is mutiny. How dare any of you assume this man's decision is an act of cowardice?
Sulu turned the command chair slowly to stare at his exec. That will be all. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
She raked a withering glare across the bridge crew, then calmly returned to her seat. Communications. Contact the nearest starbase with details on Kobayashi Maru. If Starfleet can locate a Klingon representative, it might still be possible to save the freighter. In the meantime, we have a supply run to make. Helm? No one even muttered an acknowledgement. They all simply turned back to their stations and did as he commanded them. Sulu kept his attention fixed on the stars beyond the reach of their silence. A swell of pain and love overwhelmed him, and Sulu thought of Poppy. What has to be done? I understand that now, Poppy. I honestly, really do. That realization brought with it a peace Sulu never expected to feel. It seemed somehow sinful to be content less than 24 hours after Tetsuo's death, but Sulu couldn't help thinking Poppy would understand, and maybe even approve.
Your great-grandfather must have been an exceptional man. I would have been honored to meet him.
McCoy finally volunteered. And something reminiscent of a smile tugged at Sulu's lips.
Hang in there, Doc. You might still get your chance.
Come on, lads. Let's not talk dying yet.
Kirk's knee barked a protest as he twisted about to face the burly engineer trudging down the center aisle. Equipment belt askew on his hips, Scott passed one hand through his rumpled brown hair.
What's the word, Mr. Scott?
Scott smiled ruefully at Kirk, and the captain knew the answer would not be good.
We've got generator power. But the generator and the engines aren't on speaking terms, exactly. We can run the lights and heat for another 100 years or so, but we can only change course a hair. Not enough to pilot ourselves out of here.
Which meant their only prospect of help came from Spock and the Enterprise. Torn between placing his faith in what should happen and what would, Kirk decided that miracles were made, not waited on. If he wanted to win this scenario, he'd just have to cheat again.
Well done, Mr. Scott. Thank you. My pleasure, sir. I just wish I could do more.
As the engineer sagged into another of the empty seats, McCoy wheedled from the front row.
Do you have a Kobayashi Maru story, Scotty?
Aye, Doctor. That I do. I had my share of command school, and I just didn't take to it so well.
Well, with the destructive tendencies the rest of this crew has displayed, I think anything you did would be exemplary.
Scott shook his head and settled back for the tale.
Doctor, when it comes to destructive tendencies, these bairns have nothing on me.
Ensign Montgomery Scott slouched lower at his workstation while the coupler he'd been designing rotated slowly on the computer screen in front of him. There were few alterations to make at this stage. He'd been working on it for several hours. Scott didn't mind the solitude of a computer lab at 3 a.m. In fact, He preferred it to evenings with the other command school cadets. Listening to his classmates speculate on their futures ate at Scott's already fragile sense of self-worth. He felt his own lack of ambition marked him as unworthy of the attention he'd already received in Starfleet. In truth, he didn't even want to be in command school. He wanted to be an engineer, repairing and designing ship systems while other men gave the orders and saved the day. He felt guilty that he'd allowed himself to be pressured into coming here. Guiltier still that he couldn't construct his own plan to get himself out. Stopping the coupler display, Scott made a few notes to his cousin, who'd expected the completed design before Scott left for command school. Then sent off the design with the touch of a button. He'd only just initiated the transmission when the coupler design vanished from the screen. Scott paused, wondering to whom he should report a malfunction at this time of night. Of course, he could always pry the equipment apart and track the problem himself. Before he could slide the terminal about and set to work, however, an amber trail of print danced across the screen. I thought this must be you. Nice designing, Scotty. What in the... Scott pulled his hands down into his lap, not sure if he should power down the terminal or encourage this peeper by responding.
Who are you? Don't you know it's after curfew?
Amusing. I needn't worry about curfew. Besides, I'm your fairy godmother. I am willing to grant you one wish. Send me home, Scott thought, all unbidden. He shook his head to scatter such dreams, afraid to even mention them, much less wish for them. I watched you all 3 nights while you worked on that coupler. You were a fine engineer, Scotty, but an unhappy captain. If your fairy godmother were to offer you a chance to leave command school and return to engineering, would you accept? Scott touched the screen with wondering fingers. The coupler design sprang up beneath his hand, rotating a slow, silent waltz. Yes. It was done. He couldn't take the word back now. The genie was out of the bottle and promising fealty. Very well. Simply be yourself, Scotty. Leave the rest to me. The coupler vanished along with the glowing words, leaving Scott all alone in an empty computer lab. He thumbed the power switch with one numb hand, then sat for a long time after the hum of the machinery faded. Tell me again, how did I get to be in command of this scenario? Scott's classmate glanced him quickly up and down, then shrugged. The simulation chamber rumbled shut like a monstrous clam, and the first part of the scenario passed in a haze. Scott couldn't completely divorce knowledge of the simulation's falseness from everything that happened, so he tried to convince himself that nothing impressive would be expected from him. When asked about rescuing a damaged neutronic fuel carrier, Scott responded with an automatic affirmative. The sudden red alert sign startled him.
Helm, what's the matter?
3 Klingon cruisers dead ahead. They're readying their weapons.
Full power to screens.
The command had barely cleared Scott's lips when the first barrage of disruptor fire expended itself against Saratoga's deflectors. Scott's teeth clacked together as he was flung back into his seat. The executive officer bent over his viewer.
Screens 4, 7, and 8 are down. Screens 3 and 16 are damaged. They won't last another round, sir.
Were our deflectors up?
We've also got premature detonation in 4 of our 6 torpedo tubes.
What?
And a complete loss of power in the starboard warp nacelle. We're just about done, sir.
Scott would have been less confused if the man had started speaking in tongues.
That much damage?
The exec nodded grimly.
That's the whole tally, sir.
How?
Disruptors, sir. They can do a lot of damage to a ship.
Not to my ship, they don't. Not with a single damn barrage.
Scott stubbornly lifted his chin to the Klingons on the view screen and slammed his fist onto the command chair's intercom button.
Phaser Bay.
Aye, Captain.
Scott felt each rumble like fire in his blood.
I want all phaser bays to fire on my command. Each of you aimed at one of those bedeviled crafts. Continuous fire. Start at your lowest possible frequency and range upward until you cut through those shields like butter.
The navigator was already plotting an escape course as the Saratoga's bays opened fire. Golden red light burst across the view screen like a nova, burning Scott's eyes with its brilliance as Saratoga's phasers finally reduced the Klingons to atoms.
Helm, get us out of here.
Working on it, sir. Damn it. But we've got company again.
The 5 blue-gray cruisers hove into view even as the helmsman reported.
That's it for the phaser bank, sir.
The executive officer reported as Saratoga began her limping retreat.
Bay crews report all cells exhausted beyond their ability to recharge.
The helm called anxiously.
Klingons closing.
Cut rear shields. I want everything we've got up front.
Scott's brain raced about like in a mirrored box, searching his memory for any ideas at all. He punched at the intercom again as a course of action began to take form.
Engineering?
Yes, sir.
Pull me a canister of antimatter and run it to the closest transporter room.
He thumbed another button as the helmsman announced that the first Klingon torpedoes were on their way.
Torpedo Bay! Everything's dead down there?
Everything, sir.
Light, white, and flashing, sprayed across the bridge as the Klingon torpedoes impacted with the forward screens and detonated.
Pack up every torpedo you can get your hands on and get 6 to each transporter room. And move!
Transporter room to bridge. We've got that antimatter canister. What now?
Another barrage hit with considerably more force than the last. Scott clung to the command chair while half his bridge crew was thrown to the floor.
Get your coordinates from navigations. Beam that canister to 2 kilometers in front of the Kruk ship. Then I want you to immediately beam back the canister. Just the canister. Leave the antimatter behind.
Holy cow! Yes, sir.
The distance was too great for the bridge crew to see when the antimatter was delivered, but everyone knew when the Kruk ship struck the area of effect. All 5 cruisers flew apart into white noise and molecular wind, just as they leashed another assault.
Navigator, are we out of the neutral zone yet?
We have been. They're following us.
9. We've got 9 Klingon ships closing on our port bow. Transporter room, have you got those photon torpedoes ready?
Yes, sir. Orders.
Scott checked the equations in his head again and wondered if a computer would let mathematics outprove experimentation. Shaking his head, he admitted he had nothing to lose.
Lock on the juncture points in the Klingon screen system and beam 6 torpedoes to each juncture point. Then get ready for the light show.
The resultant explosion was beyond deafening. Scott's ears rang in painful symphony with his aching heart as atomic fire consumed the 9 Klingon war dragons less than 1,000 kilometers beyond Saratoga's bow. He ducked his head away from it and was still staring at the floor when the world faded from white to ephemeral pastels to gray-speckled normalcy again.
15 war dragons on the way. Jesus Christ, 15!
Scott couldn't make himself look up to watch the ships close. The knowledge that this was not reality and that he could pay dearly for taking advantage of that fact had been driven home again with gale force when those 9 ships cleared the screen. He would do his best until this travesty was over, but he knew better than anyone else at this academy just how pitiful his best would be. Scott kept his eyes carefully focused on the wall above Admiral Walgren's head. He didn't know whether or not this private conference room was really colder than the rest of the Academy, but it certainly felt like it now.
Do you know why I've called you here?
Aye, sir. I used the Pereira field theory to destroy the last squadron of war dragons.
When the other attending officer, Admiral Howell, only looked confused, Scott realized his crime against physics would need to be more fully explained.
You see, Klingons link their shields into a multi-ship field system. That way, any shield hit hard enough can draw power from the others and keep from buckling. The Pereira theory says that a photon torpedo placed at any juncture point in the system will detonate due to energy stress.
Howell frowned.
I don't understand. Well, then what's wrong with what Ensign Scott did?
The Pereira field theory is wrong. Experimentation proved that the torpedo wouldn't detonate in reality, and hard data override mathematics every time, even in a scenario.
Howell seemed to consider this, studying Scott coolly.
I don't know, Admiral Walgren. Scott's introductory lecture sounded valid to me. Is there some definitive source of information we can refer to about this?
As if my word as an engineer weren't enough?
Walgren buzzed his own yeoman to bring the appropriate references from his library. Scott twiddled his fingers behind his back and tried to recognize constellations in the speckled tile on the ceiling. He could have explained what they wanted himself, but he suspected Walgren wasn't interested in hearing him. Walgren spoke up after several minutes of searching the manuals.
Ah, here it is. In the Encyclopedia of Engineering Development and Design, under A for Aberdeen Solution. Aberdeen, Scotland, Earth, in which Earthborn engineering student Montgomery Scott constructed 7 separate field generators based on data obtained.
Scott saw Walgren's eyes dart back to the top of the screen. Then the older admiral's hand stopped its tracing.
Montgomery Scott.
They both looked up to stare at Scott. Blushing, the ensign offered them a small shrug.
Aye, that's me.
Howell looked like he'd lost the ability to breathe.
How old were you?
About 16, I suppose, sir.
Walgren eyed Scott very seriously.
Do you tinker with engineering as a hobby, Mr. Scott?
His eyes bored into Scott intently, as though this were the final question on some test Scott hadn't known he was taking.
I majored in engineering, sir, and I thought about being a starship engineer before I came to command school.
So, you didn't want to attend command school?
No, sir. I respect what a captain does, sir, and I appreciate that Starfleet thinks I'd make a fine one, but I think my heart's meant more for commanding machines than commanding people.
A certain distant tenderness settled onto Walgren's weathered features, and the Englishman nodded slowly.
I think we can arrange that, Mr. Scott. I'm removing you from command school as you have displayed an attitude and disposition unsuited to starship command.
At Scott's delighted gasp, Walgren almost smiled.
Make good use of your failure, Mr. Scott. We don't all get a second chance.
Scott stared at Walgren in admiring gratitude as the Admiral collected his notes and headed for the door.
I'll make grand use of it, sir, and I'll never forget you for this. Thank you.
Don't thank me, Mr. Scott. Thank your coupler. I couldn't very well let the engineer who put that piece together slip away. God be with you, Scotty.
God go with you, Admiral Walgren.
Scott never saw Waldron again after that. But he always hoped that grand luck did indeed follow the Admiral the rest of his days. Most of all, he wished he could tell Waldron just how much that one decision had meant to his life.
The difference between living and just hanging around. You understand that, sir? Don't you?
He couldn't help but believe the Admiral did. Any real engineer would have. Scott smiled at Kirk from across the shuttle's narrow aisle.
It has been grand, hasn't it, sir?
The captain nodded, pained and warmed by all the memories he and the engineer shared.
Yes, Mr. Scott, it certainly has.
There was nothing more to say then, and yet much was left unspoken. As the others bundled down to sleep, Kirk admitted to himself that it had been too long that the Enterprise couldn't find them. It was pointless to hope, but that didn't help him accept the defeat. Part of his mind rooted for a solution, even though there was nowhere left to look. He couldn't stop trying, though.
I won't give up. I don't believe in the no-win scenario.
Still, try as he might, exhaustion overwhelmed him, and he sank into restless sleep. And awoke in a fever, certain of what they must do. Kirk pushed himself upright, delighting in the swell of anguish that engulfed his knee, in the giddy, dizzy darkness lingering all about him. Slapping the lighting control as he hobbled past, he reveled in the sleepy confusion that reigned as the others struggled into wakefulness.
I've got a plan. I think we can still get out of this.
No one said anything for a heartbeat. Confident of their attention, Kirk continued.
The problem with waiting for the Enterprise is that she doesn't know where to look. What we need to do is to make the Enterprise see us. We still got our radio receiver, Scotty. Can we make the radio receive everything aimed our way? Radio transmissions, light, sensor scans, the works? A portable black hole.
Kirk nodded, grinning.
That's the idea. Suppose Spock started running a by-the-book search pattern the minute the Enterprise lost us.
Well, that would be a safe assumption.
Kirk ignored the doctor.
I want Chekhov to use that assumption to direct your black hole at the ship. A routine scanner sweep should pick it up. I'm trusting Spock to do the rest.
Scott nodded absently, his fingers twitching on non-existent circuits as he plotted through his construction.
Aye, but it'll take all the power we've got if we're going to turn ourselves around. But it's worth a try. Let's get going, people.
They set to work with a passion. Chekhov finished his mathematics at almost the same time as Scott announced his black hole complete. They welded it to the shuttle's side, and Sulu suffered and sweated and kept them on course for nearly an hour before collapsing again. This time, they laid him gently in the center aisle atop a layer of heavy uniform coats. They'd done everything they could now, including drain their engines. Kirk watched for Salvation's arrival out the side viewport and hoped they wouldn't have to wait for long. The Enterprise flickered into view a mere 15 minutes later, growing in the starboard ports like a rising sun. The point of light rapidly took on the shape of their salvation. Kirk had almost forgotten how beautiful his great ship could be. McCoy sprang to his feet the moment Halley bumped to a standstill at the center of the Enterprise's shuttle bay. Slapping at the closed door with one hand, he complained,
Where's Spock? That damn Vulcan thinks we've got all day. I suppose hurrying is illogical.
As if inspired by the doctor's shouts, the airlock slid aside, releasing warm, sweet-smelling air into Halley's central cabin. Spock stood framed in the doorway.
Good afternoon, Dr. McCoy. I am pleased to learn that 18 hours of confinement has not adversely affected your social skills.
Ah, get out of my way.
Spock moved calmly aside, coming to stand by Kirk's shoulder as McCoy and a small team of medics bundled Sulu onto a stretcher. Chekhov followed his injured friend out, and Kirk watched a swarm of chattering engineers fill the compartment behind him. Spock surprised Kirk by offering the captain an arm for support. The bright bay lights made Kirk blink as they hobbled slowly down Halley's inclined ramp. Kirk wondered if he truly believed he'd never see the Enterprise again, or if some part of him had maintained faint hope. He suspected the grateful ache in his heart was answer enough.
Nothing's ever impossible, Mr. Spock.
The Vulcan glanced down at him curiously.
I beg your pardon, sir?
Did I ever tell you about my solution to the Kobayashi Maru test, Mr. Spock?
Spock raised a curious eyebrow.
I think not, sir. Does it have some bearing on what occurred on board Halley?
All the bearing in the world.
Kirk rested his hand against the Enterprise's cool ivory bulkhead for a moment, then allowed Spock to guide him out into the corridor.
All the bearing in the world, Mr. Spock.
Kobayashi Maru was written and adapted for audio by Julia Eklar. It was read by James Doohan. Editing, mix engineering, and sound design was by Gary Fink. Original music was created by Sam McCallie, Carl Schurtz, and Richard Emmett. Theme music from the Star Trek television series composed by Alexander Courage and Gene Roddenberry was used courtesy of Bruin Music. The associate producer was Linda Ross. The Kobayashi Maru was directed and produced by Carol Shapiro. This program is a Simon & Schuster AudioWorks production.